Before the onset of the 21st century, humanity used to believe that there were challenges out there that were absolutely impossible to complete. But with the arrival of a few incredible souls with expertise in the arts of science and athleticism, the impossible slowly became improbable, allowing humans to move forward and achieve some amazing feats. What do we really know about this time period, though, and the people who through hard work and determination transformed the world into what it is today? Well, whether you're interested in learning more about how the impossible was overcome, or just need something to motivate you before taking on your next challenge, stay right where you are, as we're about to explore the times that people made impossible challenges absolutely possible. You won't believe some of these incredible feats. Before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss anything we post. Riding on a bolt of lightning. Although it may sound like more of a superhero origin story than anything else, the late and great Albert Einstein used to imagine what it would be like to ride on a bolt of lightning when he was just a boy. So when he grew up and started to study Maxwell's equations of magnetic and electronic fields, he discovered for himself that the speed of light was actually constant and thus never moving faster than the rate of 299 meters per second squared. Discovering this little bit of knowledge really had the effect of ruining his ability to one day take a ride on a bolt of lightning. You see, according to his own thoughts, if he shined a light at the same time as he was riding on this bolt, the light he was shining would essentially be going twice as fast as the lightning bolt. And since light can never travel faster than 299 meters per second squared, this thought experiment clearly violated Maxwell's laws. But Einstein wasn't about to give up just yet. He knew that this impossible task had to be made possible, and through some mental gymnastics, he came to find that it was actually Newton's laws of motions that needed to be amended. So while it was most definitely true that the speed of light was constant, the same could not be said for both time and space, which in Einstein's own German words just had to be relative. Working on his general and specific theory of relativity, Einstein then came to the conclusion that gravity wasn't just a force that works through attraction, but essentially calls for the bending of space-time to truly bring about its attractive qualities. And while he never got to ride that lightning bolt due to his profession as a theoretical physicist, it is because of Einstein and his incredible scientific prowess that humanity now has a range of technological wonders that back then would have seemed like magic. Everything from the smartphone to GPS navigation is all possible thanks to Albert Einstein, who is still regarded as one of the best scientists to ever walk the earth. And to think, this innovation stemmed from him wanting to take a ride on a lightning bolt like Thor. Sounds like something straight out of a movie. The birth of teleportation. Speaking of, if you're a lover of science fiction movies, you'll know that as soon as something magical needs to be explained, the showrunner often does so by describing its effects by invoking quantum mechanics, by far the newest innovation within the general subject of the sciences. Not much is known about quantum mechanics, with this mystical nature thus making it perfect as the deus ex machina in these films. And nobody hated the invocation of this new subject matter more than Albert Einstein himself, who distrusted its effects and denounced anyone who based their theories on its invocation. You see, younger scientists than Einstein had actually used his earlier theories to build a model of the universe, which was far more based on probability and randomness than absolutes. As you know from our previous story, Einstein was a lover of absolutes. This caused one of the greatest beefs in the scientific community between the crazy-haired scientist Niels Bohr, who essentially won the scientific debate by claiming that Einstein should stay away from telling God what to do. Clearly frustrated by this public loss of his, Einstein set out to devise an experiment which would prove these quantum theorists wrong. Essentially, the idea he needed to disprove was that particles could not become entangled, and this would allow matter to instantly teleport to another destination. It didn't take a genius to figure out that this was impossible, as he thought, but proving it was a different bag altogether, and Einstein unfortunately passed away while on the cusp of obtaining answers. In 1993, however, a group of researchers at IBM decided to pick up Einstein's research where he left off, and were surprised to discover that the particles do indeed become entangled when in a quantum state, and thus are able to teleport vast distances as a result. Since then, scientists have continued along this line of thinking, and have teleported photons as far as 143 kilometers away. So if you really think about it, it is once more due to Einstein that we are so much closer to being able to teleport humans. It is also on this form of thinking that something as complex as quantum internet could be within our grasp. Spider's web of knowledge. It's odd to think that some of the most impressive scientific ideas of our time all stem from the childlike dreams of a genius. Take Tim Berners-Lee, for example, who as a child loved to read a book by the name of Inquire Within Upon Everything, known as the handiest book of its time, containing everything from information on how to get rid of stains to rules of etiquette. It made Tim wonder what it would be like to have a book that contained the answers to everything everything. This line of thinking eventually led him to believing in the idea that it one day may be possible to have information of all kinds connected intuitively and made useful to whoever had access to the program. So after graduating from Oxford and accepting a fellowship at CERN, Berners-Lee created a computer program that he fittingly called Inquire, which was available to be used by scientists and enabled them to share their ideas with one another, regardless of where they were in the world. Marveling at how far he had come, Tim became engrossed by the idea that this platform of sharing could be taken even further, which caused him to approach a number of patrons. Since the idea seemed impractical at the time, however, he was unfortunately given no funding at all. Not deterred by the flagrant disregard for his idea, Tim sat down one evening in 1989 and created 3 protocols that we all know pretty well as HTTP, URL, and HTML. But since these abbreviations only reinforced the idea of impracticability, he and his collaborator Robert Kallio decided to give the project a different, more accessible name. The name that they finally settled on is still used to this day, and you might know it best as the World Wide Web. Although he never patented the idea, Tim Berners-Lee still works as the director of W3C Consortium that governs the internet, ensuring that Inquire can reach as many people as possible in the world. The organization of the world's information. The only problem with this system of the World Wide Web that Tim Berners-Lee created was the lack of organization that came with it. And as helpful as the system was, it clearly wasn't as practical as it could have been. That being said, the organizations required to get the world's information into a number of preset categories sounded more like an impossible task than a difficult one, which is why the World Wide Web slowly started to become stale and useless as the days went by. But then 1996 came around, and a man by the name of Larry Page stepped up to the plate. As the story goes, he awoke from a dream in the middle of the night, with an idea bouncing around his head to download the entirety of the World Wide Web by making use of a number of workable links. Clearly inspired, Page spent the rest of the night working on this idea and scribbled down notes to see whether or not it would be possible. After realizing the monumental size of the task he had established for himself, Page brought in a friend by the name of Sergey Brin, and the pair soon discovered that it would be far better to rank web pages according to their specific links. And with this idea in mind, the two created a search engine that now next to everyone in the world uses to discover all sorts of information: Google. Maybe you've heard of it. A few weeks later, and the company was incorporated, allowing those who came after him to carry on the work that he and Brin had started: the creation of the 3 principles of paradigm shifts. As we can see from our earlier examples, the only thing that has ever stopped human beings from achieving the impossible is the belief that things are actually impossible. It is only when we believe that something is possible that we can be motivated enough to actually work at achieving it. Otherwise, what's the point in spending your life on that impossible question or activity, right? To combat this belief system, Michio Kaku went ahead and authored the illustrious book called Physics of the Impossible, which goes ahead and describes 3 types of impossibilities. The very first of these are the activities that we know which will be probable at some point in the future of humanity, like large-scale teleportation, for example, but seem to be outside of our reach at this current point in time. The second type of impossibility discussed is things that involve concepts we still don't quite understand, like time travel, for example. Who's to actually say that Back to the Future got the principle right and Avengers Endgame got it wrong? And then lastly, Kaku describes the third type of impossibility, which revolves around the violation of known laws of nature and physics in general. While all 3 of these types of impossible tasks might seem highly improbable right now, as they say in the sciences, this should never mean that they are impossible. According to the scientific principles, the third type of impossibility should be never allowed, as nothing can surely violate the laws of nature, right? Well, that's what we thought about helicopters being able to fly upside down. But then humanity achieved this feat and found that although it is true that the laws of nature cannot be diverted from, it's also true that we sometimes get those laws wrong. In other words, according to Michio Kaku, absolutely nothing is impossible, regardless of how improbable it might seem at first. And it is because of this scientific thinking that humanity is sure to extend itself far beyond where we are today. Who knows? Maybe the world of Star Wars and Star Trek are well within our small colony's future. Are you a solid believer in making the impossible possible? Let us know in the comment section down below.